Welcome to RickRackRuby. I'm Laura Kluvo. Today we will make this velvet ribbon purse. I chose yellow, it's so bright and cheerful, but you can make whatever color you like. It's decorated with vintage millinery flowers and it's fun and easy, so let's get started. To make the vintage velvet ribbon bag, the first thing you'll need is 10 yards of velvet ribbon. It doesn't have to be vintage. I've chosen this yellow and I'm debating about whether to use this sort of school bus color or white, and I think I'm going to just go with the white. It's a nice contrast to this ribbon. I'm going to open this reel and cut 16 pieces 15 inches long. They don't have to be perfect. I'm noticing a little blemish on this ribbon, maybe where the pin went through, and so I'm going to save this piece and cut a replacement. Here are my first 8 pieces. I'm making a note that the nap goes this way. So I'm going to call this the bottom. Every other piece I'm going to flip over. This is beautiful ribbon. It's beautiful on both sides. From the bottom, I'm going to mark up 8 inches with a pin. So right here. I could also use a disappearing marker. Now I'll sew the ribbons together from the bottom to the pin, side by side. I'll start at the top. Side by side with a triple zigzag stitch. I'll show you how I set it up on my Bernina. I'm sure your machine has something similar. First, I'll set a bar tack by opening up my stitch width to the widest, and then my stitch length to the narrowest. So I'm going to start with a bar tack, and then I'm going to go to this number 7, which is my triple zigzag. Here's how it looks. Starting at the bottom with a bar tack, and then the triple zigzag, and then stopping 8 inches up with another bar tack. I will continue to add the rest of these ribbons, starting at the bottom with a bar tack, triple zigzag up 8 inches, and then another bar tack. I will add all of these, and that will become one side of the bag, either the front or the back. Then I'll repeat with a second set of 8 ribbons in the same manner. Here's the completed front of the bag. I'm going to make a duplicate of this for the back, exactly the same. Here we go. I've joined the front to the back, and now, even though it doesn't seem like there would be much of a difference, I'm going to turn it wrong side out. I've also placed pins on the side seams, and in this case, all of these ribbons are identical, but you might want to do one with a pattern, you know, with a black, white, black, white, black, white, black, white, and in those cases it becomes more important. So I'm going to stitch a hem across the bottom here. I'm going to pin it carefully, matching up the seams. and stitch across the bottom, straight across the bottom. Now I'm going to box off the corners. So I'll do that by creating a point. And clip the stitches in between those ribbons right here, and then I'll seam it right here across the width of one ribbon. So right across here, I'll box off that corner. I'll trim that corner, and then I'll repeat for the opposite side over here. Now I'll turn it right side out. Pushing out those corners right here. And the bag looks like this. Eventually these will flop over. Kind of looks like a banana, doesn't it? First we're going to create the lining, the casing, and the straps. Let's get started on the lining. I'll make a pocket. This is a 3 by 5 inch rectangle for the pocket. Right sides together. I'll stitch around the edge, leaving an opening in the bottom for turning. And this is 8 by 8 for the lining. After I finish the pocket, I'll line it up on the lining and stitch it in before I assemble the lining. All right, so first I'm going to sew the pocket. I sew the pocket, I'll turn it right side out. I'll poke out all those corners and I'm going to press it. And then I'll top stitch the top edge. That's about 2.5 inches down from the top edge. I'm trying to center it. It's always a challenge. And I'll stitch around these 3 edges, leaving the top open. And now I'll place the 8-inch squares right sides together. I'll stitch around the squares, leaving the top edge open, and then I'll box out the corners. I've sewn around the 3 edges, and now I'll trim this little corner, the seam allowance only. Open it out, flatten those seam allowances like this, and then pin and stitch across about 1 inch from the corner. There's my first corner. I'll trim it, and I'll do the second corner the same way. Now let's see how the lining fits inside the bag. Looks good. I actually think the pocket is a little low. The pocket could be up a little bit higher. That's just for a credit card or an ID or something. The lining looks a little big, so I'm going to take a little bit more generous seam allowance on the side seams. I won't stitch all the way down since I already have the corners done, but I'll come in about 1/2 inch and then taper like that. I think 8 inches is probably still the right size for the lining, but just use a 1/2 inch seam allowance instead of a 1/4. I think that's perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to pin this to the inside and then baste. And when I say baste, I'm going to take a single strand of kind of a heavy-duty thread, and I'm just going to hand stitch with a running stitch all the way around. I've got the lining all basted inside, and now I'm going to create a casing with this ribbon. I'm going to pin and stitch the ribbon around the top edge of the lining, concealing that raw edge. I'll stitch very closely to the to both edges of this ribbon all the way around. And then when I get to the second end, I'm going to fold it back so that it has a nice finish. And then I will draw a piece of elastic through to close up the bag. Here's the start of it, and then here's the end. So I'll fold under about a 1/2 inch there, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch a little hem here before I get started, and then I'll stitch the top edge and then the bottom edge all the way around. I just want you to know that that 15-inch length is just about the right amount to fit to use for your casing. To get the elastic through, I just cut a nice generous piece of elastic. It's probably 24 inches long. I'm using a bodkin or a loop turner or a threader. I forget what this is called, but I'm going to insert this and just work it all the way around through the casing. It's not hard. It goes right through. And then when the eye of this little tool gets in here, it'll just work right through. The elastic will work right through the casing. Now I'm going to sew that second edge right there. That's done. Now I'm going to pull these tight. Let's see here. I don't want it too tight. I'm not going to make it adjustable. I'm just going to pull it a little bit tighter, gather it up a little bit to a comfortable size of opening so that it's secure, but you can still get in and out easily. I think that's about right. So I'll tie this into a knot and then I'll tuck it inside the casing. I'm going to leave that for a second. I still have to remove my basting. Remember my basting? I think that's about right. So I will go ahead and cut off these ends and tuck that knot inside. I did tie this very tightly. And just kind of poke it in. There we go. Now with our remaining ribbon, which there's plenty, there should be at least 2.5 or 3 yards. We're going to make the straps. I have 138 inches. I think for now I'm just going to cut it in half. I know it's going to be very generous, but it might be nice to have a big fat bow on the shoulder. So right here is the side of the bag, and I'm going to stitch it to the inside right there along the bottom edge of the casing. Right here. I'm going to secure it right here below the casing. Oh, and I think what I'm going to do is tuck in the end and sew it right here with a little square. There's the little square. Here's how it looks on the outside, and here is how it looks on the inside. So I'm going to repeat with the second ribbon for the opposite side. Okay, the straps are attached. The next step is to trim these little dangles. You can trim them to a V or at an angle or however you like, but I'm going to do it like this. There are 16 of them. They don't have to be perfect. Now, my favorite part of the project is to choose the vintage millinery flowers that I'll use to decorate the front of the bag, and I've chosen these daisies. This is too many, like these right here. I'll trim this off. I think I'm going to steam them, and I will wrap this wire with some fresh tape, kind of coil it up, and then fasten it to the front of the bag. I wrap the stem with a nice new piece of floral tape, and I pressed the petals out a little bit, and I coiled up the wire stem underneath and pin this little I don't know, corsage this little group of flowers here to the front of the bag. Now I'm going to tack them down with a needle and thread. I'm going to catch the wires with my needle and thread. I'll secure my thread on the inside. This leaf came off, and I'm going to use a little bit of hot glue to reattach it. I'll be careful not to glue it to the ribbon, but just to this stem here. There we go. Okay, so that's how it's going to look. Now I'm almost done. I'm going to kind of stuff it with a dry cleaner bag, and then I'm going to draw up these beautiful ribbons and tie them in a bow at the shoulder. I also want to show you another version of this project. This has sort of a midnight blue ribbon, black stitching, and a bunch of violets on the front, and the lining is purple velvet. It's made in exactly the same way, but just a different color combination for a different look. I imagine these would be sweet gifts for bridesmaids. And here's the big reveal. There is the beautiful bag, and here's the beautiful bow on her shoulder. I did trim the ends. Thank you for watching my tutorial. If you're enjoying my videos, please like, share, and subscribe.